Roll off. Medley sequence 2. Automatic cut. Drums, roll off.
Good morning. Honored guests and friends, I am Leslie Green Bowman, president of the Thomas Jefferson Foundation. And on behalf of our board and our staff and our volunteers, I want to welcome you to Monticello to celebrate the 279th anniversary of the birth of Thomas Jefferson. Please rise, place your hand over your heart, and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may be seated. And before they're out of earshot, please join me in a heartfelt thank you to the United States Army Old Guard Fife and Drum Corps. In 1801, Thomas Jefferson declared, "The only birthday I ever commemorate is that of our independence, the 4th of July. And he actually kept his own birth date secret, but the secret got out, and every April we respectfully ignore his wishes and gather here at Monticello to honor his remarkable contributions. Earlier this morning, to launch our events today, 16 local civic organizations and elected officials laid a wreath at the Jefferson Cemetery, a tradition which has endured for almost 6 decades as a part of the Thomas Jefferson Foundation's annual celebration of Founders Day. And we invite you to go and pay homage to Jefferson and see those wreaths after the ceremony. It's right down the walk from the garden, or Mulberry Row, straight down. Well, as author of the Declaration of Independence, Jefferson provided a new nation with its mission statement, a vision for equality that has inspired us for decades, but one that we have yet to fully realize. We all know those timeless words. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. This morning, we also take a moment to remember the hundreds of enslaved men, women, and children who lived and worked here and made this place possible. Literally, the ground on which you're standing was carved off this mountain by enslaved labor. Today we celebrate an extraordinary man who, like Jefferson, today we let's start over, Leslie. It's blooper time. Today we celebrate an extraordinary woman. I thought I was talking about Jefferson again. Yes, let's get actually a lot of extraordinary women on this dais, not including me. We celebrate an extraordinary woman who, like Jefferson, has had a profound impact on our world through her work and achievements. To introduce our featured speaker is now my distinct pleasure to welcome a true friend of Monticello and the University of Virginia, Melody Barnes, Chair of the Thomas Jefferson Foundation Board of Trustees.
Well, good morning, everyone. It is such a pleasure to be here with you and all of the visitors on the mountaintop with us today. And could we have a better day to do this? It's really wonderful. And thank you so much, Leslie, for that introduction. Every year, in partnership with the University of Virginia, we present our highest honors, the Thomas Jefferson Medals in Architecture, Law, Global Innovation, and Citizen Leadership, recognizing individuals who are exceptional and embrace the endeavors that were meaningful to Thomas Jefferson. This morning, it is my privilege and my honor to introduce our keynote speaker, Sherrie Rollins Westin, recipient of the 2022 Thomas Jefferson Medal in Citizen Leadership. Sherrie embodies every element and the idea of a citizen leader. As president of the Sesame Workshop, Sherrie leads the organization's efforts to serve vulnerable children through mass media in the United States and around the world. She serves as the workshop's chief mission ambassador, raising awareness and cultivating support to help children everywhere grow stronger, smarter, and yes, kinder. In her prior role as Sesame Workshop's president of social impact and philanthropy, Sherrie spearheaded a partnership to create the largest early childhood intervention in the history of humanitarian response, bringing critical early childhood education to refugee children in the Syrian response area. And working with the International Rescue Committee, she led Sesame Workshop's efforts to compete for and win an historic $100 million grant from the MacArthur Foundation to fund this critical work. And I have to ask, is there anyone here, anyone who can hear my voice, whose life hasn't been improved by Sesame Street? I mean, really, if Cookie Monster and Elmo and Oscar and all of their friends can't warm your heart, improve your day, or with their other friends, teach you something new, I just don't know what to say. For her groundbreaking work, Sherrie was named a leading global thinker by Foreign Policy magazine, was one of Fast Company's 100 most creative people in business, and was recognized with the Smithsonian's American Ingenuity Award. In addition to the Sesame Workshop, Sherrie holds numerous leadership positions, chair of the Joan Gans Cooper Cooney Center, and on the boards of the U.S. Fund for UNICEF and the U.S. Global Leadership Coalition. She is a member of the Council on Foreign Relations, the U.S. Afghan Women's Council, and the Early Childhood Development Action Network Education Leadership Council. Sherrie has also held positions in media and public service, as assistant to the president for public liaison and intergovernmental affairs for former President George H.W. Bush, assistant secretary for public affairs at the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, and senior positions at ABC Television Network and U.S. News and World Report. And did I mention that Sherrie is a who? There we go. There are always who's here. Sherrie is a graduate of the University of Virginia, and we are thrilled to welcome her back to Charlottesville with her wonderful family. And we are so proud of the work that she has done and all of the work that we know that you will continue to do. And so it is my pleasure to introduce Sherrie Rollins Westin.
Yes, wahoo wah. Thank you so much, Melody. I am so deeply honored to be here, and I'm so grateful that I do have my husband and my daughter with me today, so thank you. I cannot think of a more meaningful honor than to receive the Thomas Jefferson Foundation Medal in Citizen Leadership, and not least because it has been given to so many heroes of mine, people like the incomparable John Lewis, Marian Wright Edelman, and my dear friend Pete Peterson, whose remarkable commitment and lasting contributions build on Jefferson's own ideals and endeavors. I have to admit this honor came as a bit of a surprise, and I've reflected on what a children's television show has to do with Mr. Jefferson's legacy, what he spent time on, what mattered to him most. And I do see there is a profound connection, and that's the connection to education. Mr. Jefferson devoted his life to the life of the mind, to learning, to reading. I would like to think that he would have been very happy on Sesame Street. Education unlocked his own enormous potential, and as a young Virginia legislator, he even drafted a bill to offer free education, public education for children. He built an extraordinary library that would become the foundation of the Library of Congress. And of course, as everyone here knows, Jefferson continued that commitment after his presidency by doing something radical for his time. He built a university, the Commonwealth's first public university, so that more would benefit from the opportunities an education affords. He saw education as essential to the republic he had helped build. And in the end, among all his legacies, Jefferson wanted to be remembered as the father of the University of Virginia. Now today, the people walking around the university grounds look a bit different than they did 2 centuries ago. For all his belief in expanding education, Jefferson and his peers focused their efforts on improving the lives and minds of white men. But even as we recognize the limits to his vision, I believe the underlying values to which Jefferson dedicated himself are as vital and essential as ever. Jefferson believed in the power of education, the power of innovation, and the power of human potential. And I'm struck by how these 3 ideals are at the very DNA of Sesame Street. Now, I know when most people think of Sesame Street, you do probably think of a big yellow bird or Cookie Monster's insatiable appetite for cookies. Perhaps you sang to Rubber Ducky with Bert and Ernie, or perhaps you're singing along again with your children or grandchildren. But what you may not know is that Sesame Street was an educational experiment just as ambitious and unprecedented as Mr. Jefferson's university. By the 1960s, every child in America could attend public school, but children experiencing poverty were often falling behind, arriving at school without the skills they needed to learn. At the same time, television had become ubiquitous. It was a powerful influence on everyone, including young children, but it was not always a good influence. This was a time when the former FCC chairman, Newt Minow, referred to television as a vast wasteland. But my mentor, Joan Gans Cooney, and her co-founder, Lloyd Morissette, were convinced it didn't have to be that way. They connected the power of the new medium of television with the pressing need for early education. They had a theory. If children could learn from jingles of Alka-Seltzer or beer commercials, why couldn't they learn their ABCs? So instead of building a university, Joan built a street where the air is sweet, where the classroom was a stoop of a brownstone. Instead of professors, they recruited friendly neighbors like Luis and Maria. And as the country grappled with the death of Dr. Martin Luther King and the struggles of the civil rights movement, Sesame Street was the first children's show to feature a racially integrated cast that celebrated our differences as well as our common humanity. You know, I'm constantly amazed at the prescience of Joan and her colleagues. It was the first show to focus on preschoolers, on young children, because they thought that's where they could have the greatest impact. Joan also had a hunch that if a parent were watching with a child, the learning would be deeper and carry on off screen. That's why they included celebrities, musicians, humor, and parodies to appeal to adults as well as children. Today, we have the neuroscience to prove they were right. A child's brain develops more in the first 5 years of life than any other time, and the way a child learns is from engagement with a caring adult. Joan also enlisted Jim Henson to bring alive new friends like Snuffy and Grover and Oscar in a can to teach children letters and numbers, but just important, how to relate to one another, how to manage emotions, and how to understand a very complex world. And as the world has changed, we have continued to draw on a deep spirit of innovation that I think Mr. Jefferson would have made Mr. Jefferson proud. Through the show and more targeted initiatives, Sesame has tackled some of the most challenging issues that face us all. Addiction, incarceration, divorce, even death. We always approach these challenges from the lens of a child, with extensive research to make sure we're on the right path. When Will Lee, the actor who played Mr. Hooper, died in 1982, they didn't just recast him. Instead, they used the moment to explain death to Big Bird, and in turn, a generation of children. And when the parents of 800,000 children under the age of 6 were facing deployment in Iraq and Afghanistan, Sesame created a special initiative for military families. We helped them manage the challenges of deployment with help from Elmo and his dad, Louie, who had to go away for a long time. We also helped children cope with the challenges of a parent coming home injured, or worse, when a parent doesn't come home at all. When increasing numbers of children were diagnosed with autism, we introduced viewers to Julia, a joyful, artistic 4-year-old Muppet who has autism. The other characters embrace Julia and the special way she moves through the world, what we like to call a Julia sort of way. And Julia helps children with autism feel less alone, but also shows all children how much they have in common. One of my favorite stories is from a mom who told me that she used Julia's storybook, See Amazing 123, to show her child, 5-year-old daughter, that like Julia, she had autism. And her daughter responded, "So I'm amazing too, right?" 53 years later, and more than 1,000 studies show the enormous effect Sesame Street has had on children's long-term outcomes, especially among those least advantaged. Today, Sesame Street is seen in 150 countries. We like to say we've become the longest street in the world. In fact, Sesame Workshop is the world's largest informal educator of young children. When Joan created Sesame Street, she said she thought she was creating the quintessential American show. It was on a stoop in Harlem with a cast that reflected the diversity of America. But within a year, Brazil, Germany, and Mexico all reached out saying they wanted their own versions of Sesame Street. And that's how Sesame Street became Via Sesamo and Sesamstrasse and Plaza Sesamo. We create local versions reflecting the language and cultures of children around the world, meeting their unique needs. And in recent years, as more children have been forcibly displaced than any other time since World War II, we knew we needed to innovate yet again, to harness the power of media and Muppets to deliver playful learning and nurturing care for refugee children, not just through television, but digital media, print media, and on-the-ground services. We started by reaching families affected by the war in Syria. And it was a production called Ahlan Simsim, which means Welcome Sesame in Arabic. Soon after, we expanded to meet the needs of Rohingya children fleeing persecution in Myanmar, as well as Venezuelan families on the move. And now we're reaching children affected by the war in Ukraine, whose lives are being turned upside down. Throughout, we create characters and storylines that children can relate to. Like in the Middle East, we have a Muppet named Jod, who had to leave his home, and he becomes best friends with his new neighbor, Basma. These characters become powerful role models, helping children see their own potential. Take, for example, in Afghanistan, where we were on the air for 10 years with a production called Bache Simpson, which means Sesame Garden in Dari and Pashto. Our lead Muppet is a little girl named Zuri. She's 6 years old, she loves to go to school, and she proudly wears her school uniform with her hijab. Zari inspires young girls to dream big, to think of possibilities they may never have imagined. But equally important, she shows boys that it's okay for girls to go to school, even normal. In fact, boys who watched Bache Simpson tested 29% higher on gender equity attitudes. They were more likely to say that girls can grow up to be doctors and engineers. And in qualitative research, I love this part, we heard time and again that fathers who watched Bache Simpson cited Bache Simpson as the reason they had changed their mind about permitting their daughters to go to school. Even though the upheaval last summer forced us to halt our production, we have to hope that because of Bache Simpson, the next generation of Afghan boys and girls will grow up to believe in their fundamental equality. And that's the power of Sesame Street. Our Muppets don't just teach the letter of the day and the number of the day. They open hearts and minds to plant the seeds for societal change. Today, Sesame Street is reaching millions of children around the world, many of whom have no other access to quality early education. I wish I could say that Sesame's work is done, that we had leveled the playing field for children everywhere, but I believe the need for our work has never been greater. A global pandemic has created the largest disruption to education the world has ever seen. And sadly, this won't be the last disruption children will experience, whether it's from a pandemic, climate disaster, or conflict. But we're fortunate to be working with others who understand the critical need for early childhood development in crisis settings, like the Humanitarian Collaborative at the Batten School of Leadership and Public Policy, right here at UVA under Dean Solomon's leadership. 53 years into the Sesame Street experiment and 203 years after Jefferson founded the University of Virginia, the world has changed quite a bit. But our fundamental goal remains the same: to unlock the potential inside every child, especially those too often left behind. Just as Mr. Jefferson believed in the enduring power of human potential, we know that children are remarkably resilient if given the right tools. Now, I have a favorite picture that I keep in my office. It shows Elmo, Big Bird, and another president who served centuries after Jefferson. I remember when Joan Gance Cooney first met Barack Obama. It was a few months before he won the presidential election in 2008. Joan told me, I would have bet you $1 million that he'd tell me his kids watch Sesame. But instead, the president-to-be said, my sister and I grew up watching Sesame Street. Then he added, and I knew it was made for me. Of course, not every child who watches Sesame Street is going to grow up to be president. But just think what would be possible if every child thought they could and were given the tools they needed to reach their highest potential. Jefferson believed in the power of education. He believed in the power of innovation, and he deeply believed in the power of human potential. And I am so proud that Sesame Workshop carries on his legacy to this day. Thank you again for this incredible honor. And I do have to say, as both a daughter of Virginia and a proud alumna of Mr. Jefferson's University, this recognition is all the more meaningful to me. So thank you.
Thank you, Sherrie. And I think I know what Jefferson might have said had he met Joan Gance Cooney. He would have altered a famous quote to say, "This street of Sesame is now so well in motion, it will go around the world." As you may know, the Thomas Jefferson Foundation Medal in Citizen Leadership joins companion medals in law, architecture, and global innovation in recognizing individuals who personify the qualities at the core of Jefferson's vision for America. And each year, they give us reason to celebrate the best of the human spirit and hope for the future. They remind us that the values of self-government, freedom, and equality remain a work in progress, shaped by us, by the contributions of individuals. For the first time, we are honored to present the Thomas Jefferson Foundation Award in Citizen Service, recognizing an organization in the Charlottesville-Albemarle community doing the work to strengthen the bonds among us and ensure life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness for all. And in recognition of the Sesame Workshop's initiatives with refugee communities and its partnership with the International Rescue Committee, we are delighted to honor our own Charlottesville International Rescue Committee. I invite Sherrie to assist me in conferring this award. Come forward. You'll stand here. And now I'd like to invite Executive Director Harriet Kerr, on behalf of the IRC, as we affectionately call it, to accept the Thomas Jefferson Foundation Award in Citizen Service. Everyone, please welcome Harriet Kerr. Have a look at the camera. Show the award. We're going to hold up while we look at the remarks. I can see that. Thank you.
Thank you all so much for this inaugural award. What an honor. And I was thinking about being here today. I was trying to imagine what the world looked like from this mountaintop 200 years ago. We're told that Mr. Jefferson, in his retirement, received distinguished foreign visitors at Monticello. I assume most, if not all of them, were Europeans. And he lived surrounded by the descendants of involuntary forced migration from Africa, who came from a rich variety of different cultures, traditions, and languages, unappreciated by those who enslaved them. But let's move forward a couple of centuries. The International Rescue Committee opened its doors here in Charlottesville in 1998 and welcomed its first families fleeing the war in the Balkans. Since then, IRC has resettled some 5,000 refugees and other immigrants in Charlottesville from more than 30 different countries. Charlottesville has welcomed these new Americans with great care and kindness into our community, providing a safe and nurturing environment in which to rebuild their lives and raise their families. In doing so, Charlottesville also has been irrevocably changed. We're no longer a quiet southern town. In the 12 years since I returned here to lead the IRC, I see how community members recognize that even a small city has a role to play on the world stage. A conflict in a country halfway around the world, such as the recent evacuation from Afghanistan, impacts us right here. We increasingly view the larger world through the eyes of our new neighbors, colleagues, and friends, sharing both their concerns and their joys. More people are being forcibly displaced from their homes now than in any previous time in history. And with modern media, all of us have become witnesses to terrible loss and suffering. 1 out of every 95 people on the face of this earth have been forced out of their homes by conflict or persecution. It's difficult to comprehend a statistic like that and completely overwhelming. But we're not asked to fix the whole world, just whatever corner of it we can. Refugees who arrive here seek only the opportunity to make a new home and a new life. So many of you over the years have helped by befriending an immigrant neighbor, reaching out to refugee children in your kids' class or soccer team, volunteering to teach someone English, or writing our elected officials in support of welcoming those in need to our country. In doing so, you haven't just helped these newcomers. Through your actions, you have changed our community as well and what it means to be a member of it. Charlottesville is still in the process of realizing its full potential, and our refugee and immigrant communities are very much a part of that process. I'd like to thank all of you, our neighbors, our supporters, our friends at Monticello and the University of Virginia, and those who have joined us from all corners of the globe. IRC is honored to be part of this caring community and to be able to serve the new Americans who also call Charlottesville home. Thank you so much. Thank you.
We're honored to be able to hire someone.
Yeah.
Thank you, Harriet. I know many of us at Monticello take your remarks particularly to heart because we've had the good fortune of having some of those refugees on our staff. And one of my most moving moments as president was on our July 4th naturalization ceremony more than once, when it is our own staff member who's been working here, I'm going to get choked up, that we're naturalizing that day. So it's a great honor to have you here on the podium with us. And I want to thank again Sherrie Rollins Westin for an incredibly moving and inspiring speech about the way that children's rights and equality really are important to make equality available for everyone. Children who grow up with those values change the world. And you have been changing the world street by street around the world. For adding immeasurably to this ceremony, I want to thank the New York Community Trust, the Peter G. Peterson Fund, the U.S. Army Old Guard Fife and Drum Corps, the American Legion, Post 74, Paradox Bakery, who prepared the cupcakes this year in honor of Thomas Jefferson's birthday. We can all learn new tricks thanks to the pandemic. So this year you get a cupcake instead of a piece of cake. I really want to thank our wreath presenters and especially as well to our community partners. After our program concludes in a few moments, you can stop by the tent at the rear of the West Lawn to learn more about the work of organizations in our own community who advance citizen service and civic engagement every single day. A full list of those partners is included in your program. We will conclude our ceremony with a 21-gun salute, and after that, we invite you to continue your morning with birthday cupcakes and an encore performance from the Old Guard Fife and Drum Corps. Thank you for joining us. Please stand and direct your attention to the American Legion Post 74. Happy birthday, Mr. Jefferson.